Good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding in the portion of Pinchas, Friday, the sixth reading, in the portion which is on chapter 28, verse number 16. In the first month, in the 14th day of the month of Nisan. That's the first month in the Hebrew calendar. Pesach Hashem is a Passover to God. On the 15th day of this month, Chag HaShavuos, it's Shivas Yomim. It's a beginning of, it's a holiday of 7 days. Matzah, you should eat matzahs for 7 days. But the first day is Yontiv, is a calling of holiness. And not do any work on Yontiv. Now she says that even essential work, such as preventative loss, you cannot say that you're allowed to work on Yontiv. It's not Shabbos, that if it's in a case situation, you can lose money, you're allowed to go to work. You're not allowed to do it, which is permitted on the meter days. You're allowed to do that on Chol HaMoed. You're allowed to go to work if it's a loss of money. But you're not allowed to work in Yontiv, even if you're going to lose money. You shall bring an offering to God. You have to bring an offering, a burnt offering of 2 young bulls. 1 ram, Shiva kvasim, and 7 lambs. And this is the musaf that we say on the holiday of Pesach. It should be unblemished to you. Also, you do a musaf every day of Pesach, even a Chol HaMoed, because it's also you bring korbanos on those days. Pardon, what is the bull? The bull corresponds to Avraham Avinu, who says, it says he ran to get a bucket, a bull, a young bull. The ram symbolizes Yitzchak Avinu, who the story he was saved by the ram who gave himself the ram. Kvasim, when it talks about lambs, it's usually connected to Yaakov Avinu, because Yaakov Avinu, it says he separated the lambs. And I saw all of this in the commentary of Rav Moshe Darshan. Moshe Darshan must have been somebody who Rashi loved, because he's brought down many times in Rashi that Moshe Darshan. Moshe was a god. He was a Darshana. He was the one who said a lot of Haggadah interpretations. Verse 20, and its meal offering should be made out of flour, what's mixed with oil. 3/10 for each bull, and 2/10 of flour for each ram, for the ram, 21 ram. You shall offer la'il tas, and you shall bring up an offering of 1/10 of flour for each lamb, the shivas akvasim for the 7 lambs. And then you need 1 young male goat for the sin offering to bring forgiveness upon you. Verse 23. This is all besides the tamid. So the morning tamid, the morning offering and the afternoon offering was brought every day, irrelevant to Shabbos or Yontiv, etc. You always brought an oil in the morning and a burnt offering in the morning and one in the evening. You always have to make these offerings. You have to do this every day, not only the first day and the last day. You have to do it every single day of Yontiv, the 7 days of Yontiv. And that's why I said before, we say Musaf every single day, the 7 days. Today it's 8 days. The rabbis added a day. It's 8 days of the holiday of Pesach. Alayla Satamid is brought with the regular Ayla, Yaseh ben Niskay, and its libations. Now she says that you should not decrease it progressively, as in the case of Sukkot, we'll get to over there. It goes in it starts off with a large amount of animals and ultimately goes down to a lower. But when it comes to the Pesach, every day was brought exactly the same thing, the 7 days of the holiday. In the 7th day, shall be a day of calling Yontiv again. You're now doing work on the first day of Yontiv and the last day of Yontiv. And then that's the holiday of Pesach. Now we go from the Pesach, 50 days later, Shavuos. is called the day of Bikurim, the day you bring the first fruits to the Beis Hamikdash. Bikurim, the holiday of Shavuos, had many names to it. It's called Matan Torah. They've given the Torah. It's called Yom Bikurim. It's called the day that the first fruits were brought to Eretz Yisrael, and it's called also Shavuot, the days 7 weeks. And the day of the first fruits, you bring a meal offering. In your festival of weeks, here you see the second name, your festival of weeks. Matan Torah is not mentioned in the Torah; it's mentioned by the sages. It should be called a day of holiness. Shavuos was 1 day. In Etzal, it's 1 day. Chutzlot, it's 2 days. You're not allowed to do any work on the day of Shavuos. Now she says, this is the festival of weeks. Shavuos, it's called the first fruits of the wheat of the harvest because of 2 loaves, which were the first of the wheat offering that was brought in the new crop. So that was the beginning of the celebration of the first wheat offering that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash. And it was also the time that began from Shavuos till Sukkot that you can bring the first fruits, the first fruits that a farmer brought up to the Beis Hamikdash. So you have to bring a burnt offering to God. You have to bring 2 young bulls. That's again, you say Musav on Shavuos. Shiva Kvos Shana, 7 rams, 7 lambs for the first year. When Chasim say listen mincha b'lulu b'Hashem, and their meal offering is fine flour with oil. 3/10 of wheat, of flour for the bull. And 2/10 for each ram. I mean, for the ram. You need 1/10 of flour for each lamb. The shivas hakvasis for the 7 lambs that were brought. See, it is a mechal achatas. You need again 1 male goat for atone sin for your sins. This is all besides again the morning offering and the afternoon offering. When the chasei and its meal offering mitasu you shall do. Timimi milachem. They need to all be unblemished in eskeim and their libation. Now she says, what is the meaning that they should be complete and their libations? Means that even the libation shall be unblemished. Our rabbis learned that the wine that's turned moldy is unfit, or as we know today, yayin that is cooked. That's why we cook the wine. When you cook wine, you diminish its value. And that's why that wine was not unblemished; it was uncooked, and it didn't become moldy, etc. Chapter 29, verse number 1. Now we come to the 7th month, which is the month of Tishrei, which we are all headed towards. In the 7th month, the month of Tishrei, in the first day of the month. Rosh Hashanah, it's a day of calling to you. You're not allowed to do any work. Yom Teruah, it's a day of the shofar. It's a day of blowing. Yilachem shall be for you. Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is 2 days everywhere. It's called in the Gemara a Yom Arichta. It's called a long day because Rosh Hashanah is the first day and the second day of the month. He shall bring a burnt offering to God. Par ben bakar, one bull. Echad, ayel echad, 1 ram. Kvasim neshana, again, you have to bring 7 lambs of the first year, unblemished. Verse number 3, and then you bring the meal offering for fine flour, mixed with oil. 3/10 of flour for a bull. Shnei mesel ayel, and 2/10 of flour for each ram. And 1/10 of flour for each lamb. The shivas are kvasin to the 7 lambs. We see there is a mechal chatas and 1 young male goat for a sin offering. To bring atonement to you. Also is chaydish. First day of Rosh Hashanah is chaydish. You have to bring the chaydish offering also. And the tamid, you can't forget that. The morning offering. So not only you have the Rosh Hashanah offering, you have the Rosh Chodesh offering, you have the morning offering, the Eilas Tamid, and its meal offerings, libation. Kimishpatam, reach nechayach. It's a pleasing smell. Isha Hashem. It's a fire offering to God. Now she says the additional offering of beginning of the month, which is the first day of the new year. So it's also you have to bring the Chodesh. So in the Rosh Hashanah you have Rosh Hashanah, the offerings of Rosh Hashanah, the offering of the Chodesh, and the offering of the new year. If it's Shabbos, now you have Rosh Hashanah, there's Chodesh, Shabbos, and the offering of the Eilas Tamid. And when you daven, that's when you see the davening, that it all depends if Rosh Yontiv or Shabbos or Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbos, the prayer is changed. And especially the Musaf prayer is changed, because you're going to add all those things to the Musaf prayer. So everything is done today in the prayer, and like tomorrow, Mitzvah Shabbos, you're going to add the Musaf Shabbos, and it's going to talk about the sacrifice that was brought on Shabbos. Verse number 7. Now you come to Yom Kippur, the 10th of the month. Hashviya Zeh. And then the 10th day of the 7th month, Tishrei. It's again a day of holiness to you. And you shall afflict your soul to fast. But also you're not allowed to do you're not allowed to do any work. You shall bring an offering to God with a pleasing smell to God. Par echad, one young bull. Ayal echad, one ram. Also again, lambs, 7 lambs in the first year, unblemished. Verse number 9, and the meal offering mixed with oil. It shall be fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 for the bull, and 2/10 of flour for the ayal, for the ram. Verse 10, and then you have 1/10 for each lamb, for the 7 lambs. Now, verse 11, Sirism echachatas. You have to bring for the community. You have to bring the Sirism like every yontiv. You have to bring 1 male goat for a sin offering. That's besides milvad chatas hakipurim. That's besides, as is brought down in Pashas, in the portion of Emer. Over there, you have this. You have the whole portion about the avodah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. That's besides all this. You still have to bring the morning offering. Even on Yom Kippur, you still have to bring the morning. That means the day of Yom Kippur started with the Eilas Tamid, the morning offering. It ended off with the Eilas Tamid. And that's why Yom Kippur is a whole different Aveda. Yom Kippur, you have more prayers. Not only you have Shachris and Musav, and then you have the Aveda. So there's 3 prayers in the morning itself. Because in the morning itself, you had the Shachris, the Oila, you had the Musaf, which is what was brought on Yom Kippur, and then you had Chatas HaKippurim, and that's the Avodah, the 3rd prayer, what's called the Avodah, and that's a whole other prayer. Oilas Tamid, Asim Chasam, and Escape. So Rashi says, Mavat Chatas HaKippurim, the goat offering, whose blood was sprinkled in the inner chambers, mentioned the portion of, I'm sorry, Achrei Mos, I apologize, said Emer. Achrei Mos Kedoshim, Achrei Mos. So over there is mentioned the holiday of Pesach and the avoid of the Kohen Gadol on the holiday of Pesach, of Yom Kippur, I'm sorry. Eilas Tamid, again, besides the regular burnt offering that every day was brought in the morning, you have to add all these things. Shall bring this one. The Skeim, this refers to the different offering which are stated, and the phrase "you shall offer" is not written, but implies this denotes the command. Besides the continual burning offering and its meal offering, you shall bring all these libations. The same applies to every time the libations is mentioned in connection with the old festival, except when mentioned in connection with the festival of Sukkot, which is tomorrow offering for all expression of libation, and their libation is connected to the continual sacrifice that was brought, the libation of wine. Tomorrow, Emir Shem comes to the holiday of Sukkot, which is an extra libation, which is the libation of water, which is a whole different service that was done in the Beis Hamikdash on the holiday of Sukkot. But over here, when it talks about libations, it's all the libations of wine, which is brought with every sacrifice. And that concludes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. We are still in chapter 4 of the Geras HaTshuva, the epistle of the Alter Rebbe on the concept of Tshuva. Mamish, precisely in the analogy of creation. Hamav del Havdalas Lane Kates, but you have to also to make, even though we give you an analogy of creation in the world, but self-understood when we're talking about spiritualities, even though the Torah talks in the way of man, a person has to realize that we're not making God human, and God is beyond the concept of humanity. The Torah talks in the way of a person, in the way of man, but still know the Hamavdil Elef Hamavdil Havdalas Lane Kates. This is an allowing an infinite differentiation involved between the creator and created. We have to understand that. Even though we give an analogy, see, Mipsari, as the expression says, I see God from my own body. It's a pasuk. Mipsari echzelaka. I can see God for myself. And the meaning about the Maggid taught, Alter Rebbe teaches that we can see a lot of connections, but still, it's a great differentiation. You have to make you cannot compare God to the body. It's an analogy, but you have to realize that your analogy is a far, far-fetched analogy. It's an analogy that you should understand something, but you cannot bring the connection between the two. So you gotta, as the expression over here, allowing for infinite differentiate, a big differentiation. There's no comparison between the creator and the created. There's no connection. There's no comparison. There's just an analogy. And you have to never lose that concept. Do not make God chas v'shalom human. You're not allowed to do that. That's the second commandment in the Torah, that you're not allowed to make God human in any kind of a way. So therefore, realize again that when the Torah talks like man, or the Torah gives an analogy to God, it's an analogy, and do not chas v'shalom bring God into a physical concept, because that is making an idol. So you're not allowed to do that. And yes, hefresh otzum ma'od l'mayla. There exists a unbelievable difference above you. Again, it's no comparison. It's just an analogy. It's a faraway comparison. Bein tzva kol tzva shamayim, between all the hosts of heaven, afila hamalachim, even the angels, are spiritual in comparison to humans. They're totally different. Even between humans and a malach, there's a great differentiation between them, even though they're both created. Shenivra ma'ayin liyesh. There's no really difference in creation to the creator between a malach and a human. Because to the creator, they're both created and he's above creation. So what's the difference in God between a malach and a human being? There's no difference. There's the difference by us, that we're more corporal, we're more physical, and a malach is more spiritual. So to us, a malach is more holier than a human being. That's what we call malach holy, the holy angels. Because they're much greater than us. They're more spiritual than us. But to God, there's no difference. Why? Because to God, both the malach and both the human, both in essence, both the spiritual and both the physical are both created. That's why to call God spiritual is also not a right name. Because spirituality is a creation, is a concept that is created. So therefore, the Eibishter is a creator. And therefore we call him, we mentioned this many times in Tanya, Kadosh Baruch Hu. He's holy, he's beyond. That's Kadosh means Muvdal. And you look at Rashi. Rashi says what means Kadosh, holy, means that he's Muvdal. Separate. There's no comparison between God and creation. Any creation. Whether it's creation of the world, physical creation, whether it's creation of the world of Atzilus, the most spiritual creation in Kabbalah. Higher than even Malachim, even angels. Still, Atzilus to God as a creation. They derive their life. Anything in creation derives its life. It's so therefore it's all an outer, it's all external. It's all external. Everything that comes from God to give life to anything is called an external concept of God. It's all external creation because he's the creator. And the creator creates. So to the creator, everything in creation is something out of him. That's why it's something separate from him. Even though it's part of it at the same time, because it's an outer expression. And an external aspect in Kabbalah and Chassidus of a life-giving power is called the breath of his mouth. Al derech moshel, like the breath of a human being. He breathes. It comes from his essence, but he breathes. So the breath of his is the expression of his essence. A deep breath is a deep expression. But the breath itself is an expression. When you say an expression, that means that it's expressing something. So the thing that it's expressing, maybe I don't know what it is. I cannot even give a name to it. But the thing that it expresses is external of what it expresses, of the expression. So that's why the Zohar wants to give the Alter Rebbe is explaining you the Zohar. So even to say that the Eibishter breathe is Vayifa ba'apach nifmashchai, the Eibishter took a breath, a deep breath. That's external expression. That's self-understood. It's an expression. It's the way humans talk. So it's basically not we can never know the essence. That's what when Moshe Rabbeinu asked God to see, maybe he can. It's impossible. My thought is not your thought. So how is it possible to understand the essence? But it says, all from the breath of his mouth, all the hosts were created. And that's what so Kabbalah and Torah says. This is the creative power embodied in the letters of the 10 utterances. So it ultimately comes into words. The breath, Eibishter's breath comes into words. So what's the difference? Difference between a soul, a godly soul, and the world, they're both created from God. Difference is, in a very realistic way, and what we can understand, is that the difference is the will was created, that breath came into words. And the soul is just the breath. The soul, came from the breath itself. So it's the thought itself. But everything in the will came the breath the way it came into words. Why did the Mishnah say that the will was created with 10 breaths? No, it said it was created with 10 utterances. It was created through words. Because in essence, the sages wanted to say that there's a big difference between, even though the soul and the world are both created, are a created concept, but there's a difference in creation. There's the creation through words. That means the breath has to come through another level, has to come down into another level of words. And these words have to have combinations, as we learned, to be able to ultimately come in everything. So it's thus basically the descent of the breath that has to come in from level to level. But the soul was created straight from the breath. And that's what Alter Rebbe is trying to explain. These are the letters being from the nature, being in the nature of vessels, and drawing down and so forth into life, as I explained in Likutei Sichos and Likutei Amarim in part 11, chapter 11. Chapter 11. This is the contrast between the soul of man. The soul of man, it derives initially from the innermost dimension of the life force. Who comes from not from the words, doesn't come from the letters of God. It comes from the breath itself. By Yipach, he blew. So as mentioned before, the verb indicates the internal aspect of the divine flow of the life force, the breath itself. For he who blows does so from the innermost being. Thus the soul originated from the internal aspect of the life force that flows, issuing from God. It is only afterwards, in order to enable to invest in a body, that the soul descends to a more external level as the Alter Rebbe goes on. But the soul itself is Vayipapa, is an eternal expression of God. And ultimately, which that's why Olabah Machshava, we say the difference between the soul and the world is that the world was created through words. The soul was created through the thought of God. So it's a deeper concept. But ultimately, the soul has to come into this physical body. Physical body was created from the earth, which is created from the words of God. So the soul, that is the essence, has to come into something that's external. So you have pnimis and chetzenis. You have to look at yourself. That's why Chassidus says you have to look at yourself in these two levels: pnimi, your inner, and your chetzenis, your outer, because you're created. A human being is the bringing together. That's the difference between the human being and the rest of the world. The rest of the world is only outer, besides a mitzvah. But the rest of the world is an outer concept. And now you have to bring within it. So therefore, it's an outer expression totally. But a human being has within it both things. He has within it a body and he has a soul, a godly soul, which makes it automatically an inner and outer at the same time. Then it descended through more concealed planes, like the angels who were created by the means of letters. It had to come down ultimately. My soul, because my soul itself is made out of the 10 spheres, which is letters. Right? You learn Chassidus, you have the essence of the soul, and then you have the expressions of the soul. The essence spheres. Chesed, Chochma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet. So now the soul comes into 10 manifestations. Nasa Adam, which ultimately comes into the word Nasa Adam, which created man. Nasa, let's make man. So ultimately, it can come in this soul, can come into a physical body. So this then is the difference between the soul and angels. Souls derive from the innermost aspect of godliness. It derives from as the Alter Rebbe started the Tanya. It derives from the God's name Yud Kei Vav Kei. While angels, even angels was the highest level in creation. Angels are rooted in the external aspect of godliness, divine name Elikim, as explained. So everything else, Bereshis bara Elikim. Everything else in creation comes from the name Elikim. That's why, when was the soul created? Before the creation of the world. A soul is higher than the creation of the world. Because the soul comes from Shem Havaya. The soul of a human being comes from the name of God. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Bereshis bara Elikim. The rest of the world, everything in the world comes from the name Elikim, which is a concept of the concealed concept of godliness, where God comes in an external concept. U'lachein nikra malachim. In general, we find in the Torah that we give the angels the name of God, Shem Elikim. We call sometimes Bnei Elikim, that the angels are called Elikim, because they come for the level of Elikim, the second name of God, which shows in the concept where God comes within the nature of the world. As it says, the pasuk says, for the Lord your God is the God of gods. And it says Elikim, the last word referring to angels. As you say, praise God of gods. As for Shalom, that there's a God of gods. But over there, the pasuk means, as the sages interpret the pasuk, it means angels, the God of angels. We give Elikim to angels because that's the closest. Because really, Elikim, Bereshis bara Elikim, everything comes from the Shem Elikim. But the closest to that concept is Malachim. That they are a creation, but they're a spiritual creation. They have a concept of the form, but they don't have a density to their form. And as it says, an open pasuk by Yavi b'nei Elikim, and the sons of God, who are the sons of God in that verse? The Yisyatev, and everybody interprets that verse as it's going on angels. So we see that we give, and we. This is very interesting because you don't put the name of God with a human being even. That's why the Lekei Avram, Lekei Yitzchak, Lekei Yaakov was all set upon them after they passed away. You can say Lekei Avram, Lekei Yitzchak, Lekei Yaakov, because you usually don't put with a human being God's name. Besides Malachim, we call them actually Kim, because Malachim don't have free choice in a way. So therefore, we're not afraid to call them in the Torah. The Torah is not afraid to call them with the name of God. Why do we call B'nai? Why we call them Elikim? Why are they in Torah? Malachim are called Elikim, the highest level of creation, spiritual, before the ultimately physical. Because ultimately, even their life force comes from the chitzenius, comes through great contraction. Because they come through the words of God. So their creation, their spiritual creation, is ultimately like the physical body of a person was created through words. So too, Malachim were created through words. And the name Elikim, the word Elikim in general, is an outer expression, Legabe Shem Havaya, in comparison to the name of God, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So therefore, the truth is both names of these names you're not allowed to destroy. You have to put it into Shemus if you write it, and etc. Both are holy names. But Elikim you can say, and Havaya you cannot even say. So Havaya is a much greater name, even in halacha, even in simple Jewish law. Because Havaya, why? Because again, in Pichsidis, the answer is because Yud Kei Vav Kei is an inner name of God, and therefore it's thought. It's a level of thought, and therefore you can't say it. It's such a high thought that you can't even say it. And Elikim came through words already. So therefore Elikim, I'm saying Elikim because I'm not saying the name, I'm not saying it right either, because I don't want to say the word. Okay? We don't say it in vain, just to say it. We say when we make a bracha, you don't say Elikim, when you don't use a kuf, you use a hey. Right, you know that, hopefully. So you say, I can say it now just to teach you, Elohim, but in general, when you talk in general, you change the hey to a kuf, so you say Elikim, not the word itself, but still, because it's a holy name. And we don't say a holy name just to have a conversation, or even to learn, just learning. So we say Elikim, but we don't say the name Havaya at all. I just say Havaya, change the word, totally. I put the hey before the yud, so I have changed the word, and that's why I say that's the term Havaya. That's the yeshiva term, as they would say. That's how you say it. But you're not allowed to say the name of God, Yud Kei Vav Kei, in the right way, because that is still in the concept of thought. It's a very spiritual name. It's extremely a deep name, and therefore it's an inner name in comparison to Elikim. Nishmas Adam, but therefore now you understand why the Zohar writes that the soul of man is connected. And we started this chapter. The soul of man is connected to Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's not connected to Shem Elikim. It's connected to this name. The soul has four levels, like the name of God, Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Alter Rebbe is trying to establish a foundation to understand what happened with the sin. It's all to explain you that ultimately we should understand what happened when I sinned in the name of God and what the tshuva rectifies. So you simply need to know in Kabbalah and Chassidus what is the makeup of the soul in an understandable way. And here we're giving you an understandable. The makeup of the soul is Yud Kei Vav Kei. So you have to understand Yud Kei Vav Kei, that name of God, what its meaning is, and what's the four letters. And now you'll be able to understand what the sin broke and what the tshuva is going to rectify. And therefore, it's important to understand this chapter to be able to go to the next step, which is this is a very deep chapter, Kabbalah, but Chassidus, but you can understand it. You can. But the soul of man is derived from the inner aspect of the godly vivifying power. Hashem, Shem Havaya Baruch, because it's part. The soul is not part of Shem Elokim. The soul comes from the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. And that's why, again, the Alter Rebbe brings down in the chapter 2 of Tanya that the soul of man is a Chelek Hashem, Chelek Havaya Mamish. It's a part of the name of God. Mamish. It's made up of that. It's made up. It's not something that's just a nice word, because you have to understand that it's made up of this name of God. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Kishem Havaya, in a general concept, if you want to know the difference, because trust me, to understand the difference between Shem Elokim and Shem Havaya is a very deep concept, and we could all learn it. But the general concept, in a simple way, is Pnimis and Chetainis. That's the general concept. Shem Havaya is a Pnimi, is an inner aspect. Shem Elokim is a Chetainis, is an outer aspect. Now, in general, a lot of people can understand outer aspects more than inner aspects. It's hard for them to understand inner aspects. They have to themselves become a pnimi to understand an inner aspect, to be able to comprehend an inner concept. So if a person, that's why there's a general contradiction between holiness, between Kedusha and the world. There's a challenge, because if I live in the world in an outer concept, I'm not an inner person myself. It's very hard for me to comprehend inner concepts. If I myself can become more a pnimistic person, more not an outer person, more an inner person, maybe I can have a relationship with inner things. But I need to be able to divest myself in a way from outer concepts to live in an inner world, See, that's one of the beauties of you come to Shabbos. That's the difference between Shabbos and the week. The weekday is an outer aspect. Sure, everything in the weekday can be connected to God, but it's all an outer thing. It's all about what it's a means to an end. Shabbos is a day in itself. It's a day on its own. It's an oasis on itself. It's a concept of holiness. So it's a day on itself. It's not there for something else. It's there for itself. And that's the difference in Kedusha and a Choil. A Mavdil ben Kodesh leChoil. The difference, we should comprehend the difference between Kodesh and Choil. The difference is, in general, again, you can go deeper and deeper. The general difference is Kodesh is an inner aspect. It's there for itself. And Choil, mundaneness, Choil is a Chetzonis, that it's an outer aspect. It's there for something else. Just like you have the vessel and the light. The light is there for itself. The vessel is made for the light. Now, the truth is, the light needs the vessel and the vessel needs the light. But one is an inner concept and one is an outer concept. It's just prioritizing or putting things in its right place. You need the soul needs the body as the body needs the soul. But the soul is an inner aspect and the body is its vehicle. When the body becomes an inner aspect to itself, when the body becomes its own concept, then you have the contradiction between the body and the soul. There should never be a contradiction, because the soul needs the body. The soul cannot accomplish in the world without the body. So the soul understands the real importance of this body. So we're not diminishing the Chetzonis. That's my point. My point is not to diminish the Chetzonis. I'm not telling, the inner is important to get rid of the outer. No, the inner needs the outer, like the outer needs the inner. The problem is when the inner has a conflict with the outer, when they become their own entity, and each one thinks that they're living in their own world. Then you have a situation, and you have a conflict. We need to come to a realization. We need to come to the concept that the inner needs the outer, and therefore the soul respects the body, and therefore we need to respect the body, because the soul comprehends that its true elevation and its true purpose comes through this vessel, the body. And without it, it would never be able to reach a higher level in its journey without the body. And therefore, it respects the body and it cherishes the body. The body also needs to cherish the soul. The body also needs to realize that it's just a vehicle to the soul. It's a vehicle what the soul can accomplish. And therefore, it's important. But its importance is that it's the vehicle to the soul, that it can accomplish the soul's journey. And together, when the body and soul work together in unison, then you have a perfect situation. Because we're not diminishing the importance of the body, and we're surely not diminishing the importance of the soul. And that's why you say you don't diminish Shem Elokim. You're not over here saying, oh, Shem Havaya is the name of God. Shem Elokim is secondary. No. We put it together. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. Elokeinu is Shem Elokim. So we put it together. What do we say? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, these two names of God. We're putting them together. But what we're saying, Hashem Echad. We're trying to make unity in these names. Unity. There's not a differentiation. They both have their obligation. They both have their purpose. And together, they become one. Hashem Echad. Together, they become one. Together, the body and the soul become one. Because they accomplish the mission of God in the world. And you cannot have this, but it's important. But nevertheless, it's important to understand this concept of pnimis and chitzonius, the inner and the outer, the oid and the vessel. I can give you 10 names: the light and its vessel, the spiritual and its mundane. Whatever words you want to use, ultimately you need to understand it and comprehend it and use them out both to the fullest. But here, through understanding this concept of pnimis and chitzonius, the concept of the two names of God, the concept of the soul and the body, to understand what the soul was made from, through its spiritual source, Yud Kei Vav Kei, to understand what the body was made from. Bereshis bara Elokim, you're able to comprehend why they need to work together. And if they don't work together, and that's the concept of sin, when they don't work together, when suddenly there's a conflict between Shem Havaya and Shem Elokim, because we've taken it with the Shem Elokim, we turned it into a nature within itself. Then you have the struggle and you have the breakdown of the oneness. Havaya Echad, you have the breakdown of the oneness. And what happens with that breakdown of that oneness? The unity, that relationship, etc., etc. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful concept if you can comprehend it and learn it. And you'll simply understand the concept of an Aveda, the concept of a sin in the Torah, and the concept of tshuva, really the aspect of what we're trying to rectify through this breakdown, and how actually the rectification is going to bring even a greater concept in this unity than it was before. Because the sin and the tshuva, in essence, the sin and the tshuva after that proves actually the unity. If we didn't have that sin, so to say, we would never know that there was a true unity, because it would be just something like a tzaddik who doesn't even know that there's a concept of separation. When we have a separation, and that brings to unity, to tshuva that's going to come after, that shows the greatness of this unity. That shows the depth of the unity, because it came through the moment of a separation that brings about this unity. Okay, we're going to learn further. Let's end this off. Which the Tetragram integrates the innermost dimension of life-giving force, which is higher than letter. That's why we don't say the word Havaya. That's why we don't say the word, because it's higher than words. It's not only higher than words, because we understand it, because Havaya stands for past, present, and future at the same time, which is higher than words. In words, once something comes in words, then there's a past, present, and the future. But Shem Havaya, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, that stands up, that brings about the way God is above time and space, because time, by God, time, space is all the same time. It's all one. That's higher than a human being can. As the Rambam writes, to understand that by God, past, present, and future is at the same moment a human being cannot comprehend. Because a human being, ultimately, his body is created through Shem Elokim, which cannot comprehend this concept. Shem Elokim is automatically Oisius, which automatically comes in words, which is a time and space for everything. So everything in this world has its time and has space. But nevertheless, the Eibishter wanted you, Torah wants you to connect to Shem Havaya. Because you have within you the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, your neshama, which is above time and space, which is far beyond time and space. So therefore, your soul is connected to above time and space. So it should not be confined by time and space. It needs to elevate time and space. It needs to bring about a unity in time and space. And that's my service to God, to take this world and reunite it with above time and space, something that's greater. And that's why Torah Nitzchi is. That's why Torah is everlasting. It's above time and space. It's not connected to a time and a space. Torah is above time and space. It's connected to all time and space. Never changes, continues, and it deals with time and space. It 100% deals. Torah deals with time and space. Halacha continues to grow in time and space because things have changed in the world. Ultimately, things have changed. The world has changed. And the world of 100 years ago, or the times of Moshe Rabbeinu self-understood, is not the world of today. Because time has changed and space has changed. But godliness is above time and space. Torah is at the same time above time and space. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu lived in a tent, put on tefillin, like I put on tefillin, because tefillin is above time and space. The mitzvah is above time and space. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Tanya, truly magnificent. Today is the 20th day of the month. In Tillim, in Psalms, you just say chapter 97 to chapter 103. Chapter 97 to chapter 103, and you would do the chitas of the day. What a great thing. Tomorrow is Shabbos, Baruch Hashem, but we cannot learn together and on Zoom. So hopefully you will all learn your chitas tomorrow by yourself. And we'll meet together in Be'ezrat Hashem on Sunday. We'll come together again and we'll learn at 8 o'clock. We'll continue to learn the chitas of the day. Have a wonderful and beautiful Shabbos.